My journey took about 3.5 years just to join the Marine Corps. So I was flight instructing for the University of North Dakota, and I was unfulfilled with what I was doing, and the Marine Corps seemed like a good option at the time. So I went to a recruiter while I was flight instructing, and I had a heart murmur that needed to be cleared. The day that I got my heart murmur cleared, my recruiter told me they weren't accepting pilots for 2 years. So that's when I made a move out to California and found a job working for an aerial mapping company. I did that for a couple months and immediately realized that was not going to be enough for me. I went back to a recruiter out in California and started up the process. He said we'd make it happen. And 2.5 years later, I was at OCS in Quantico, Virginia. And your first flight is actually a taxi fam. So you go out to the jet, your instructor hooks up to the side, he's on a headset, and he talks you through the startup process. And then he hops in the paddles truck once you're all started up, and he talks to you on the radio. He's in a pickup truck, and you taxi out to a vertical landing pad, and you do a couple things on the way out there. And then when you're out there, you convert. The jet does its transformer thing, and that's kind of an emotional event because it's the first time the lift band spools up behind you. It's the first time all the doors open, so feeling all that is different. It's an opportunity to get the jitters out, and then the next flight, there's a chase jet and an instructor that chases you, and you go up and fly for the first time. And it's pretty cool. You get to break the sound barrier the first time you fly. I just wanted to be the best wingman that I could be. We train, my Marine Corps path, up to that point, I'd been in the Marine Corps for about 6 years. So there's a whole lot of training that goes into it, and to finally do what I signed on to do, I just wanted to do it as good as I could possibly do it. You're always searching for that perfect flight, and you're always striving to reach that. Obviously, you want to be at the top of your game when you're going to support Marines on the ground. So that was my mindset going into it. As far as goals go, I started into my section lead workup. So I started to lead flights when I was out there, transitioning from wingman to leading flights, and I actually got to lead some combat flights. That was a big step for me. My first combat mission, I was able to employ ordnance and then return home. So obviously, both my lead and I were feeling pretty good. We both got to employ ordnance, and being the first mission was pretty special. And then we return home, and as I land on deck, you can see the smiles on the guys' faces, so climbing down that ladder and shaking everybody's hand, and my skipper was up there to meet me, and the lead hopped out of his jet and came over. That was a pretty special memory for me. For both exercises, I did close air support, so went out there and dropped ordnance for the guys on the ground, and that's always cool when you get to go to a different country and work with their JTACs or FACs that are on the ground. They got some controls as well, so they were on the radio. You could obviously tell when they were on the radio, but I did cast as a single both exercises, so I was out by myself. It was good we got to employ the gun. That was before we had seen combat ops. So for TACR in Djibouti, that was the second time that I'd been able to employ the gun with live ammunition. So I'd done plenty of simulated runs, but it was the second time that I'd gotten to use actual ammunition. So we obviously knew that we were about to get into combat ops, and any opportunity that you have like that to get some good training in is obviously important, especially in the situation that we were in. Well, the biggest tool is your wingman. We work together, we're a team out there, so we back each other up at all times throughout the flight. The beauty of the F-35 is you've got sensor fusion technology, so all the different sensors on the aircraft, all that information is relayed to us on one display that is in front of us. And when we make designations on that display, as far as like air-to-surface targets or air-to-air targets, all that information also appears in our helmet. So typically an aircraft will have a heads-up display, which is on the front of the aircraft, but we have all that information in our helmet. So everything you're able to see in space and time. When you look around, you can see your air-to-surface designations. You can see your wingman. There's a circle around him, so you know exactly where he is. If you designate the adversary out there, there's a box around him. There's information like altitude, airspeed, aspect angle. So you have all this information that is fused together in one display, and it's the ultimate situational awareness enhancer for us. We did support Operation Inherent Resolve in Iraq and Syria. I kind of relate it to sporting events. If you played sports at all, before the ball goes up in the air and the ball is tipped, you always have those little jitters, but once you're into it and you start flying, then you just fall back on your training and you stop thinking about the bigger picture of where you are and what you're doing, and you're just focused on what's happening in your cockpit, what's happening around you. So I would say that the nerves go away a little bit when you start flying, but then again, when you are on station and you're talking to an American force on the ground, then the adrenaline kicks in for sure. So you know that there's good guys on the ground, there's bad guys on the ground, and the adrenaline definitely picks up. When something does kick off, it's usually pretty quick, and you have to build your situational awareness very quickly. As soon as you start talking to those guys on the ground, they start relaying what's happening down there. It's a constant battle to understand everything that's happening on the ground. So building the picture of what's happening, that way you can employ the jet however they may need it on the ground, whatever they may need. You always ask yourself what's next. I think that's the best question to ask yourself when you're in the jet, and I pull that all the way back from my civilian flying as well. Whenever you have downtime, you can always ask yourself what's next. You're prepared for what's coming next, and that's how you try and stay ahead. There's no worse feeling than being behind the jet. We call it hanging on the stabs. There are certain missions where stealth is more of a necessity than others. I would say close air support, the stealth is not too much of a factor, but we do other missions as well, like a defensive counter air, which is basically making sure the adversary, the other aircraft, stay where they should be and they're not overflying American forces. So we're able to track them, and in that type of situation, we obviously don't want them to see us, so stealth would become more of a priority. Well, really, you're comparing apples and oranges with the Harrier and the F-35. The F-35 brings so much more capability than the Harrier does. And the Harrier is a great close air support platform, but we're a multi-role fighter, so we do the air-to-air arena, air-to-surface, and stealth and fusion technology. Those types of things bring a huge advantage for us over the Harrier. There's a lot of automation involved. Harrier pilots might like to say that the computer flies us. It's not exactly true, but the automation does simplify things for us. When you're in the admin phase of flight, things should be simplified because really you want to focus all your energy and your concentration on the mission at hand. So the C is the carrier version, right? It's got a launch bar, it's got a hook on the back, it's got beefier landing gear, and since the Bravo is a stowable version, we have the lift fan system in it. The C doesn't have the lift fan system, so that frees up a lot of space within the C. So internally, they carry a lot more fuel. They carry around close to 20,000 pounds of fuel. We carry 13.5, so that gives them about an hour more of flying time. So that's an advantage that they hold on us. But they've also got a wider wingspan for maneuverability at slower airspeeds for landing on the carrier, and they can also fold those wingtips up for storage on the carrier as well. But they operate off the carrier, the Bravo version. We operate off the smaller decks because we are the stowable version, the short takeoff vertical landing version. We had, as a squadron, we flew 1,200 combat hours. So training can only get you so far. When you're out there, the situation is fluid. Things are always changing, and you can't simulate something like that. So as far as the mission planning and all the different things that go into making the flight happen, I have a better understanding of how that works, and I have a better understanding of what the larger effort is just to get us into country, and then working with the guys on the ground, I have a better understanding of what it's actually like to be a part of that out there. So there's an overall understanding, and then on a lesser scale, on an individual scale, I have the experience of being out there that's made me better. Yeah, there are 8 months of invaluable lessons that I learned, not just flying, but how to integrate with the MU, how the ARG works. There is a multi-service, worldwide effort to make something like this happen. So understanding where we fit in and all that, that is probably the biggest lesson that I will learn. But I have 8 months of notes of things that I learned, and it was always in the back of my head that we were the first ones to do it for the F-35. So trying to capture everything that we learned to pass on to the guys behind me as well. Obviously, that is important because we want to make the Marine Corps F-35 all F-35 squadrons as good as they could possibly be. I mean, you obviously get to know the guys on the ship pretty well. You live in small quarters, you work together every day, so you develop friendships that you didn't have before you were on the ship. So that's a big part of it. And then going into the MU, you just have so many questions. And this is my first combat deployment, as to how we fit in, like where does our puzzle piece fit into this puzzle, and going out and traveling the world, and you begin to understand how the process works, and develop an understanding of where you fit into all this. So at this point in my career, I don't really think about legacy. It's not something that I'm trying to shape at all. I hope that I've got a lifelong group of friends and a lifetime of stories to tell. And I hope that my peers and my squadron mates that I fly with will look back and think that I was a great guy and even a better pilot. But that's about all I hope for at this point. I don't think too much on legacy.